you guys ever heard of a watershed moment? Have you ever heard that concept?
Explain that.
So imagine like a raindrops falling from the sky onto a watershed, right? It's going to go on one side or the other. It's either going down this way or this way.
Yes.
Dude, there was times when like the water's coming down. If it goes this way, you're out of business. And if it goes this way, you're in business, you know? And you're like watching it and you're just like, oh crap. And like, please, please, please. And it like gets right to the last moment. You're like, it goes this way. And you're like, we're still in business, you know?
This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Net Worth. Today we had Justin Prince on, and he dropped some serious bombs. He taught us about memento mori, contemplating your own death, and how it makes you live a more purposeful life. He taught us how to pick yourself up from failure and climb back to the top. And he taught us how to do all of this stuff for your business while still living a spiritual and family balanced life.
Whether you follow Justin Prince, seen all of his podcast episodes, been to his events, or you've never heard of him before, you're going to love today's episode because we asked him questions he's never been asked. So please enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show. I've been able to hear you speak a couple times, and Callan, my co-host, he's a little bit newer, but I'm excited for you to kind of educate us and fill him in on a lot of this stuff. So thanks for being
honored
here.
to be here. Love what you guys are doing, and adding value to people and showing up and like putting good stuff out there. I think it's awesome. Happy to do it. Yeah,
Beyond Net Worth is really kind of just about, we feel like you embody it because we don't want to find people just have the net worth, but it goes beyond it. It's people that really have a good work-life balance, put the priorities in the right spot. So maybe begin. I want to give a little bit of background of your story. I know you kind of have a rags to riches story, but if you wouldn't mind, focus for me on some of those crossroads in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think a lot of people know kind of that you started and from rock bottom and made it to the top, but give us some of those crossroads that made a difference.
I mean, there's so many of them, so I'll highlight a couple of them. But I was raised basically in a middle class family. My folks got divorced when I was 12. I was my mom's oldest. My dad was married prior and had 2 kids, and so I was raised by single parents, but I lived at my mom's, and it was some really lean years. We were just talking about the Sup for Santa. I've been on the receiving end,
really?
Of some of those. And when you have a single mom, those are some really, really lean years where you're wondering where how you're going to pull everything off. And so that was really cool to be able to.
Do you remember how old you were when you got someone did that for you, or what impact it had on you?
Yeah, probably like 13 or whatever, maybe 14. But even just that, so we moved 13 times in 7 years. So the whole teenage years, she was hustling hard to keep it all together. My mom's she's an amazing woman. And so I remember one crossroads just to start. So I'm 13 years old. I'm sitting in math class. I'm in 7th grade, and I'm not listening to the teacher at all. I'm like staring out at the window. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, you can do whatever you want now. Like, you can have sex, do drugs, drink alcohol, smoke, never go to class. And you can you can just blame it on your parents for the rest of your life. I was like, that's a good point. And then I thought to myself, yeah, you can do that, but you have to go live that. Whatever, you can blame it on your parents too, but it's your life to live. Like, you have to live within this life that you go create. I was like, God, that's a good point too. And I just decided that day as a 13-year-old kid, no, I'm just going to go kind of live a good life. I'm basically going to go create my own life, and I'm not going to blame it on anybody else. And I look back now, I talked a lot about ridding yourself of all entitlement and raising your personal accountability. And even as a kid, I was like, I'm going to own my decisions. I'm not going to blame my life on somebody else. And that was, I think, a really pivotal kind of crossroads moment, even as a young kid in math class,
How did you have, because you're saying you were like a young teen.
Yeah, 12, 13, yeah.
So that, I mean, I know for me, like that's like the toughest age. I was the hardest on my parents to raise at that age. How was your moral compass intact, right?
It's so interesting. So as a young person, but a young man specifically, like a lot of your brain hasn't been fully developed, and so that's one of the reasons teenagers do such stupid crap is you're like, what are you guys doing? They're like just not quite like calculating all the ramifications of the stuff they're doing. And I'm sure I did my fair share of stupid things. Don't get me wrong. But I look back at that and I'm like, man, that was really blessed to like have that like logical thought process with myself of like, you can do whatever you want, but then also you have to live the consequences of it. And I just made like a really conscious decision of like, I'm just kind of going to go this way. And so I think on the flip side, even though kids, their brains aren't fully formed, all that, kids are smart. Kids are really resilient, really smart, Yeah. And so I just fortunately was able to make a decent decision and keep moving forward. We moved 13 times. I had no real working background. I made pizzas. I did construction work for my dad's construction company, but like I was called the gopher, like the go for this, go for that, go for that. So it wasn't like, I wasn't like learning a skill. It was just picking up, the stuff.
Learning hard work.
Yeah. Learning hard work for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about pivotal. So my dad would drop me off at his construction sites when I was 8 years old, 10 years old. At 8 a.m, and he would pick me up at 5 o'clock at night when he, so I was just like there with all the construction workers and stuff. I mean, you probably wouldn't be able to do that today, but
no,
I was just this kid out there just working all day long, and that was pivotal for sure. At 21, I started working at a mall kiosk. I was selling animated Bible videos at a mall. I tease people that the malls where all of us older people used to go in the Amazon was a river, we go hang out at this place called the mall.
Yeah.
And worked at the mall. I always had big dreams, big goals. That was pivotal because it taught me how to sales, direct to consumer sales. And, I was the guy that they tried to avoid at the mall. Like people try to not look at you. And but man, learning how to sell, because there's almost like there's a ladder. The lowest rung of the ladder would be like $1 per hour. Yeah. Next up would be, in my opinion, would be a salary. And a lot of people are like, the salary is like what I want. To me, a salary is they're paying you just enough to keep you.
They're dangling the carrot.
That's right.
Yes.
Above that would be all commission. The good thing with all commission is if you get really good, you can make a lot of money. If the bad thing is if you don't sell anything, you're toast. Right. You don't make anything. And then above that would be like, equity asset building where you're actually building assets. Yeah. So it's just this progression where I learned how to sell, and it was just a huge benefit to me. And then 25, when I was introduced to my first business, and kind of the long story short, that business was actually succeeding, but the business ended up failing. The company that we were distributing their products for, one night was in business, one night wasn't in business. Like they just 24 hours later was toast. And so I basically lost everything. Below zero financially, back on credit cards, back on taxes. It was a really precarious time. At one point, I moved my pregnant wife and now 2 kids into the loft of my wife's parents' garage. So I have my 2 little babies sleeping in the closet. My wife and I are sleeping in this little loft area. I had to go get 2 part-time jobs to kind of keep us afloat.
Right. As
I started another business to see if I could like help us become like financially free or whatever.
Okay, I want to hear, what does it take to pull together the strength for a rebuild? Like, because I know that this business collapsed. I think I'm pretty resilient, but I think it might take me a while to get back up. Yeah. But what was the time span between the rebuild to the...
It's such an important, like dive down into that question, because that was really, really challenging. I mean, I cried grown man tears just rolling down my face, just like, I was like, gosh dang it. And I had this big conversation with myself then. I was like, screw business. Like, just give me a good job. I'm out of here, because the risk of it, I just was like, forget this. I think what happened though is you kind of hunker back down into like your reasons or your whys. When your whys are clear, your whys can pull you through tough times. And for me, I wanted to be free. I wanted to live a significant life. Like I couldn't imagine my whole life just like punching a clock and going to work every day. I couldn't imagine. I still wanted that dream or that vision of creating freedom for myself and for my family. I wanted to live a significant life. I wanted to add value to people. And so I kind of had to hunker back down into that. But let me say this.
Please.
A lot of people, I tell people confidence is the foundation of your success. Like believing in yourself is the foundation of success. So if you imagine a foundation, like that's like rock bottom, right? The foundation.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself? Or what do you do if you don't have confidence that you can do it or that the business is going to work? Like your confidence to get shaken, which mine was super shaken. And there's below the foundation there's another C word that I think is actually what can get you from where you are to where you want to go, which is courage. It's like having the courage to start again, having the courage to get back up, dust yourself off. My dad said to me once, he's like, if you get bucked off the horse, you can like lay there and, bleed. But like, what are your options? Like you can just continue to lay there and bleed forever, or you like get back up, pick out the rock and gravel, dust yourself off and get back on the horse and go again, and like have some courage. I feel like our country needs more courage. I feel like, as parents, we need to teach courage to the kids. And the essence of leadership is example. So you're teaching it through your own having courage. If you don't have courage to do it, let's say you're online, you don't have courage to put out a video because you think your video sucks, or to start a podcast like you guys have done. You don't have the confidence yet. You just rely on your courage. If you don't have the confidence that you're going to go crush it in business, but you want to succeed, go have the courage, lean into your courage. Now, courage can build into confidence where you're actually like, I got this, or I believe at least I'll figure this thing out. And that's kind of where I was. I was just like, I couldn't justify that all these other people could figure something I couldn't just figure out. At some point I was like, get back up and let's go.
Well, it's not optional it's either courage or failure, right? Because you have to have it, especially, and we could talk about this a little bit too, but don't quit, right? Like one of the things you preach is, help me with it. I will persist until I succeed.
For sure.
Right? And for me, that's a big deal because that's the only thing, working in industries where there's a lot of headache and a lot of maintenance and a lot of failure. That's the only thing that's the main thing that's going to separate you from the businesses that die out, is just to refuse to tap out.
Yeah. So I will persist until I succeed is a famous scroll from the Og Mandino, Greatest Salesman in the World. That book's, 100 million copies. It's one of the great sales books ever.
Yeah.
And the word until can guarantee your success. So I'll persist until I succeed. Most people persist until it gets hard. They persist until the business fails. They persist until they get bucked off the horse. They persist until a customer quits. They persist until the team member's like, yo, I'm out. They persist until the adversity gets strong enough. And there's some people that just say, I'm going to persist until I succeed. So I'll give you an example. If I had a quarter, the word until can guarantee your success. So if I had a quarter and I flipped it up, caught it, landed it. So what are the odds? Like if we were math guys, flip it up. What are the odds I could land 10 heads in a row? You say, okay, 10 heads in a row. There's only 50-50, right? Because it's a heads and tails. Start doing the math, 10 heads in a row. Are the odds 10%? Is it 1 out of 100? So 1%? Is it 1 out of a million? Like what are the odds? Do you want to know what the odds are? 100% for sure guarantee. Why? Because I didn't limit how many times you can flip the quarter. You can flip the quarter until you land 10 heads in a row. It's just keep flipping until you do it.
Absolutely.
So you just persist until you succeed. So a lot of these businesses, it's like, how many people can you call on? You can call on people until you find the ones that you're looking for. Like you just keep persisting until you figure it out. Now I was keynoting in Seattle for a wealth management firm. The median income in the room was $750,000. So some were making a few $1,000,000 a year, some are new. So the median was $750,000. But it was a pretty astute group of people.
Yeah.
And there was a gentleman there. He's probably in his 60s. I was in my 30s. He was probably in his 60s. And, he kind of had his hand on his chin. He's kind of like looking at me like, I don't know. And I was teaching this principle. And then he finally was going to raise his hand, but then didn't. And I just called him. I just said, do you have a question? And he said, I do. He said, there's a difference between being persistent and being crazy. And he's like, I feel like you're saying if you persist until you succeed, that you'll be, guarantee your success. He's like, you could also be crazy thinking that. You just keep banging your head against the wall. I said, That's fair. I said, do you want to know what the word is? He said, what's that? I said, it's adapt. But the word until still guarantees your success. I will adapt until I succeed. I will grow until I succeed. I will change until I succeed. I will navigate and adjust until I succeed. Like I will persist until I succeed, because someone that's persistent will go try and go over the wall, under the wall, through the wall, around the wall. They'll just figure it out. They'll find the weak spot of the wall, but they will do it until they figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is a mantra that I've built my whole life on.
One thing I was thinking of when you were explaining the, flip the coin analogy, right? Is I think a lot of us would see getting 10 heads in a row as a daunting task, right? But the one thing I would say is just start flipping the coin now, right? Yeah. If you're not flipping the coin, you're never going to get the 10 heads in a row. But if you can do it early and often, obviously that's one of the biggest benefits to taking risks earlier than later, is that you're going to be able to get there sooner and see the rewards for a lot longer, right?
Yeah. So there's no reward without risk. And so if you want the reward, you have to take some of the risk. And you want to mitigate your downside, right? You want to lessen the potential downside, maximize your upside. I'm cool with that. But you have to have some risk to have some reward. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is you have, to your point, the sooner you start, because you always start imperfect. You don't always have the perfect plan. You adjust and you adapt. Like my current business. Have you guys ever heard of a watershed moment? Have you ever heard that concept?
Explain that.
So imagine like a raindrops falling from the sky onto a watershed, right? It's going to go on one side or the other. It's either going down this way or this way.
Yes.
Dude, there was times when like the water's coming down. If it goes this way, you're out of business. And if it goes this way, you're in business, And you're like watching it and you're just like, oh crap. And like, please. And it like gets right to the last moment. You're like, gah, it goes this way. And you're like, we're still in business, And it's super, super stressful. Entrepreneurs know what like the 3 a.m. wake up calls of guts full of stress feels like. You just wake up, you cannot sleep, and you're just like, oh my gosh, trying to figure things out.
What was that moment when you had the watershed moment?
We had probably 30 of them, probably 50 of them, We had a ton. Like we were either going to fail or stay alive, like have another gasp of oxygen to keep going. But now that business has done, over 2.4 billion in revenue.
That's what you're currently doing.
Yeah, my current business, and over 4 million customers has turned into this incredible business. And I feel like we still have tons of runway ahead of us. So
right.
We just kind of stayed in business long enough. But the point is we had some of those original ideas. We launched strategies that we went all in on, and they didn't work. And we had people that I thought were going to be with us forever that aren't with us anymore. So it's just, some of it is just, you got to get in the game. That's how you figure stuff out. It's just by getting in the game, minimal viable product, start learning, and like adjust and adapt. But you adjust and adapt until you succeed, Mm-hmm. And that is, I don't know another way to do it. You can, spreadsheet it to death and analyze it to death pre trying to sell anything or pre trying to get into the game. And again, maybe that could help you mitigate some risk, possibly. But at some point, you got to get in the fight, and you got to just start, because you learn a lot from you learn a lot there's some learnings you can only do. It's what we call putting it into the wild. Yeah. It's like in a spreadsheet when you're in a boardroom on a whiteboard, that's fine. But when you release it into the wild, that's when you start to learn. Like, oh, this is what we got to do different.
Absolutely, I'm interested too in. So you talked about kind of like what's going on internally at these crossroads, like where you talked about what you had to dig within yourself to find the strength to keep going. But what are some of the actions you took to get? And I also maybe simultaneously tell us, how did you end up with Modera, your current company? Mm-hmm. Did it choose you? Did you choose it?
Yeah.
What were the actions you took from the company that crumbled to get to where you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of them, when that first company failed, I had to go get 2 part-time jobs.
Okay.
Well, one of the jobs, I went back and got my old Bible sales job at the mall.
Okay.
And it was super, super, super humbling to go back, because so this is like a step. Like, you're not too, people are like, but I don't want to. I'm like, you're not too good for it, dude. Like, get your butt back and go, get over your ego,
Yeah.
Because they were kind of like, when I left, they were like, on one hand, they said good luck, but really they're more like, screw you, like this isn't going to work and whatever. And it kind of worked, but then it failed. And so they're like, oh, I told you it wasn't going to work. And you're kind of, here you are back.
Yeah.
That was really, really
That's humbling.
Oh, it's the worst. So check this out. I'm doing that on December 23rd. I'd have to think back to exactly what year this would have been. This had been about, let's call it 13 or 14 years ago.
Okay.
I pull up at the mall. It's on December 23rd, so it's 2 days before Christmas. It's snowing in Salt Lake City. I could show you literally the same stall right at the same mall. And I pull up and I get my phone buzzes right as I'm getting on my car. And it's the manager guy that I worked with. And he and I have been working together for like 5 years. We were good friends. He calls me and he goes, "Hey, do you have a second?" I go, "Yeah, I'm just walking into my shift." My shift was at 3:30. And he goes, "I have to let you go." And I said, "Let me go where?" He goes, "I got to fire you." I go, "Fire me for what?" I'd come back for about 2 or 3 months now. I was the number one guy in the whole company. So, because my business had failed, I needed a job. And so it's now December. My business had failed in the fall. Go, "Fire me for what?" Like, I was positive. I was putting points on the board, the whole thing. And he goes, "Because the president of the company doesn't like that you're doing two things." And I go, "Dude, when I'm at work, it's all work. Like, when I go home, who cares? I'm putting points on the board, and I go, I have a good attitude. I don't talk to anybody."
Wasn't like a competing.
No, not at all. It wasn't like I was pulling people from nothing. Wow. They're completely separate. It just the president kind of got in his head and got into his ego,
Yeah.
And he said, he doesn't like it. So he said, "If I don't fire you, he's going to fire me." So, dude, I'm like sitting there in my car, snowing. It's December 23rd. And by the way, I needed weekly paychecks. Like, I couldn't go a month. It wasn't month to month. I was like week to week to week to week to week to week.
Wow.
And I'm still below zero financially. I'm like trying to dig myself back out. I literally said to him, part of me wanted to be like, "You know what, screw you guys." But I said to him, I go, "Can I at least go finish this shift?" Go finish that shift because I needed the money.
Yeah.
And then on right after January 1st, I started selling. A buddy of mine actually lives down here in St. George. Actually, two buddies of mine live down here now.
Okay.
They started an emergency preparedness company. It's basically a food storage company. And so I called them. This was also humbling for me. I called them and said, "Hey, can I get a job?" I went door to door to door selling freeze-dried food storage on on January probably 3rd or 4th or 5th, whatever it was. And I remember this elderly couple let me in their house and they bought freeze-dried peas. So they bought like $70 worth of freeze-dried peas, which was like, I think my commission was like $1.63 or something like that. I was just like, I walked out snowing. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Anyway, I eventually did that enough to stay afloat. The Bible Sales Job Company, the guy that fired, the main guy, the president guy that fired me, calls me one time. I saw his number and I wanted to be like, "How dare you?" Because he cut me down to size like when I needed it.
Yeah.
It really stung. But I wanted to pick up and be like, "Dude, if I ever see you." And
I've never heard this.
I picked it up and I was like, "Hello?" And he goes, "You were the soul of our company. When you left, the soul left." And he goes, "I'll pay." I think he paid me like almost double commissions. He's like, "Will you just come back and sell again, whatever?" And I wanted so badly to be like, "Oh, heck no."
Yeah.
But dude, I freaking needed the cash. I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I went back. And so then I had 2 part-time jobs. I had the Bible sales job I do typically on weekends. And then I had the other one I do on the weekdays. And all of that while you're trying to build your business, right? So I would kiss my little kids on the cheek when they were in the closet in the morning when they were asleep and it's dark. And I'd kiss them on the cheek at night when I go home and they were asleep, Mm-hmm. And I was just grinding and trying to make it kind of all come together. So the first thing I would say to your question is like, these are those things you have to have a little bit of humility. People say to me, they're like, "If I have to go get a job," like they're building their business. They're like, "I have to go get a job." I'm like, if your business can't hold the weight of your income yet or the weight of your financial burden, then go get a job. I don't know what to tell you. That's what you have to do. So as far as Modere, Modere was the transformation of an existing company. So we took over a 25-year-old company.
And did they find you or you found them?
Yeah, so what happened was I built that second business and then I ended up selling it when I was about 29, 30. And I got out of that profession. I was in private equity consulting for 2 years. So I was working with multiple companies. And then one of my kind of dear friends and partners became the CEO of this 25-year-old company.
Okay.
And they were owned by a $2.3 billion equity fund. And so he calls me and he goes, "I think we have a chance to do something really special here." I go, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, I think we could transform this company." And, we had some different ideas of how we thought we could move this entire business model along. So I came in originally as a consultant and we created this company called Modere, just kind of ripped this current company to the floorboards and rebuild it. There's a couple $100 million a year business. So the odds of this working were really low. because it was a total turnaround. It was like a turnaround and a startup at the same time. The hardest thing to do in business is a turnaround. The second hardest thing to do is a startup. They're like both. And we did both at the same time. So ripped down to the floorboards. We built this brand called Modere. We created this business model called social retail, which is basically a social sharing model where people could be paid commissions for sharing our products.
Okay, so explain it a little bit more, because I've heard you talk about social retail, and I want to understand it better.
Yeah, so we have basically the way it works is we teach people how to make money on social media and using their phones, right? Okay. And so we teach them how to market online, like we have all the marketing done for them. So they're attracting people to them versus going and like bugging spamming people.
Yes.
People are like, so what is it and what's going on? And then we have a free app. They download the app and it has their own discount code, like a $10 discount code.
Okay.
So they can give a discount, get a discount. And then lastly is we pay twice a day. So we pay them twice a day commissions.
Oh, wow.
And so, we paid over $1 billion in commissions to families, around the world, which has been really cool. And it's been really rewarding to watch this model kind of come to life to where we have millions and millions and millions of customers. The people not only receive a commission one time, but anytime those customers reorder or refer, because the customers have their own discount code, then our people receive kind of like a residual override on all the customer consumption. And so we created a model that in our profession kind of like shifted the way everyone's kind of tried to chase that original model. And so going back to your question, did they find me or did I find them? So they found me as a consultant. Then we helped creating Modere. I ended up saying, I'm in, let's do this thing. I don't want to be a consultant anymore. So I actually have been basically like leading up the sales team ever since. I was like, I'm going to go do this thing. I wanted to kind of put my money where my mouth was. I thought we had $1 billion idea and I was wrong. We had so far a $2.4 billion idea, And so I just got in the field and just like tried to prove that these ideas would work. What's interesting is this, there's that old quote that says, it's better to be prepared and not have an opportunity than have an opportunity and not be prepared. Mm-hmm. And I used to ask my dad when I was in my early 20s, I was like, Dad, how do I find opportunity? Like, how do I find opportunity? He goes, keep succeeding at what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. And he goes, they'll find you. So one of the things I would share with you is like, bloom where you're planted. Start stringing wins together now. Like whatever it is that you do. Like if you're at a job and you're like, this isn't my favorite job ever. I don't want to do this forever. That's fine. But start like being the best at what be so good at that company that when you move on, they're just like, what? Like you're indispensable.
Wow.
And be the best at the job. Be the best in your sports teams. Be the best at your business. Like be the best that there is. Like be as good as you can possibly be. And that prepares you. It's like it strings wins together. So Steve Jobs gave the famous commencement speech at Stanford, and he said, you cannot connect the dots of your life looking forward. You can only connect the dots of your life looking backwards. So you can't like see them all looking forward. But when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, if this wouldn't have happened and that wouldn't have happened, if I wouldn't have met so-and-so and this wouldn't have happened, I never would have ended up here. Those dots, you create the path forward by stringing wins together. Like bloom where you're planted, starting right now. Like be the very, very best at what you do. Great attitude, work hard, show up. I tell people always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. I built my whole career on that concept. I had people, I posted a video about this once and people were like, I had that attitude for a while, but my job never got me where I wanted to go and my boss sucked.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, there's employment situations that are not awesome. It's not a great situation for you. It's just not a healthy environment. You still bloom where you're planted. You do. And by the way, not so much for the company. You're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Meaning you're always doing more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. And then go look for new opportunities. Go find new opportunities. Go pursue. Maybe you start your own little business. Maybe you create an online business like what we teach people how to do. Like do something where you're finding other ways to get yourself out of that situation that's not so healthy.
It's so opposite of today's culture though, because you hear people that, you see people make videos of themselves like doing something dumb at work, like I'm just acting my wage, right? And so this, this ridding people of entitlement, I don't think they realize how good it is. Not only are you developing skills, you're increasing your value. Hopefully your employer or your team appreciates you, right? But sometimes when you start your own business, it's a thankless job as well, right? And you need that skill and that grit of being able to, work when no one's watching and have that have that determination even when you're not seeing the immediate fruit.
There's no question. It's pernicious. This idea of like, there was this hashtag quiet quitting that was happening, it's trending. Yeah. So it's basically like, I'm not quitting, but I'm like quietly quitting. Like I'm doing just enough to like survive, or whatever. To
barely not get fired.
Exactly.
It's still happening.
It's to me, it's the worst attitude. Let me say it this way. Let me give a disclaimer. If your goal is to succeed at a high level, your goal is to live a significant life, your goal is to maybe become financially independent, build net worth. If that's your goal, if that's not your goal, then maybe you have other goals. That's okay. But if that's your goal, this quiet quitting attitude is the exact opposite of how you want to show up. You want to show up and give more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. You give more, better attitude, better work ethic, better focus. And again, if you're not in a healthy environment, then change your environment. And you change your environment by becoming more valuable to the marketplace, by having increased skill sets, by showing up and separating yourself from everyone else. Like right now we're in this economic, let's call it a crisis, where it's this really, really weird, very uncertain economic time. The word crisis in Greek means sifter. So if you sift the wheat kernels from the chaff, you separate them. This is separation season. If you want to separate yourself, here's the good news. If you're listening to this and you're ambitious, like if you're listening to this and you were like what I was in my 20s, for example, this has never been easier to get rich.
Yes.
Because everyone else is doing quiet quitting. You show up with a freaking good attitude and work hard, you're going to separate yourself from everyone else. Like you'll stand out like a sore thumb. Like everyone will be like, who is this guy? Or who's this girl? Like what's the deal with them? So you can just separate yourself with good attitude, work ethic, a little bit of vision, good people skills. Like learn this stuff. Like go read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like go study these things to where when your friend's watching Netflix, the average person right now is watching 2.5 hours a day of Netflix. They're watching that. You're reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. You'll separate yourself from everybody else. And at some point, you'll see the importance of why you did all that stuff, because you're always investing in yourself and doing more than you're paid for as an investment in your future.
I love it, man. I think the attitude that you describe is huge, right? And one that really stands out to me is when your old boss called you, or your old president of the company, and he offered you double commission. You put your family first, right? Like you probably could have kept going in the path you were doing, but you basically said, hey, my ego is not as great as the whole, right? And that to me is a lost attitude.
Yeah. I mean, my business now is about 15 times bigger than that whole company. And so, I mean, if we had to play the checkmate game, like freaking checkmate, dude, like,
that's gotta feel okay.
Yeah, checkmate. But like if you took that whole, not just my sales team, but the whole company, my business now is probably 15, 16 times bigger than the whole freaking company.
Yeah.
So I share that to say, the competitive part of me, or the part when you're like, they felt like they just totally did you dirty, which they kind of did.
Yeah.
On the flip side,
2 days before Christmas.
Oh, dude, it's painful.
Sucks.
But on the flip side, I wouldn't be who I am without that company. I wouldn't be who I am without that experience. And I needed that double commission at that time. Like I needed it. Like I needed oxygen, And so, I tell people, your goal is to win the war, not all the battles. So I tell people, dreams over drama. You want to stay focused on the dream, not the drama. Like I needed that business as much as that frustrated me, and it really hurt me, and it really ticked me off that they did it. They kind of did me so dirty. I was the top guy they had in the company, and they just kind of did me dirty. But at the same time, I had bigger dreams, bigger goals, bigger vision for my life. And so I needed that time to give me the runway to get everything else off the ground.
And your emotional intelligence to do that it's like you have total control over your emotions. So I needed to point that out. One other thing I wanted to kind of bring up to you that I've observed in you is I've observed that you talk about going and taking what you want now. Like don't wait 60 years to be a millionaire. You can make $1 million this year, right? So you embrace that hustle mindset and going and taking what's yours, but you also put family time first. And I want you to speak to it and talk about how do you balance hustling, putting in countless hours, and also prioritizing family first? Has it always been that way for you, or is it something that you've been able to do now that you've kind of passed through
that's
the.
it. I've had multiple people ask me that question, which is basically like, did you have family as a priority even when you were just grinding? Because it's like easy. It's like now it's like easy. Like you can just sit at your house all day.
That's not the case.
Yeah. So here's what I would say. First of all, I encourage people to create priorities, like a priority list. So like, what are your top priorities? I was sitting in Japan once. I spoke for about 10,000 people at the Ariake Coliseum, and we had this little like private little dinner. And this Japanese man said to me, it's in very broken English. They call you Justin-san. So it's like Miss San would be like Mr. Justin.
Okay.
They're like, Justin-san. I said, yes. And they said, love or money? Love or money? What's more important, love or money? And I didn't understand what the question fully, but what he was saying is love is family or money. What's more important?
Yeah.
And once I understood, I go, oh, dude, easy. I go, family, easy.
Yeah.
And that's on my priority list. That would be number one. It doesn't mean it is for everyone else. It's just, this is just how I would encourage you to think about, like maybe your top 5 priorities. And so if family's number one, your relationship with your wife is number one, your relationship with your kids is number one, then everything else would be number 2, 3, 4. And so you'd rank it, right? So that was the first thing. There's a really wise man that kind of encapsulated it perfectly. He said, no success outside your home can compensate for failure inside your home.
Is that President Kimball?
Yeah. No, it was McKay, I think.
McKay, okay.
Yeah. And it's just a great way, just great encapsulation of what it really is all about. To me, there's 2 races, by the way. The first race is the race that we all know. Social media, making money, building businesses, I don't know, being famous, whatever. That's race number 1. Race number 2 is the real race, which is like your relationship with God, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your kids, your legacy you're leaving, like the kind of person that you are. And I tell
the
people,
race that you can take with you.
Yeah, if you win the first race and lose the second race, in my opinion, you kind of just lost the race, right? That's like you didn't really realize you're running the real race. The good news is you can win both. And so that'd be my first thing. Second thing I tell people is, so number 1 would be get your priorities straight. Second thing is, this is not easy, but I'll give you a couple of strategies that I've done. One is I try and enlist my family in the business. So the business isn't like my business. It's like Dad's working again. Like he's on another call. He's traveling, whatever. It's like a family business. And so enlisting your kids could be as simple as like, hey kids, listen, when Dad does, hits this goal, or this is what we're trying to do as a family. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go to ice cream. We're going to go to the park. We're going to go fishing. We're going to go to Disneyland, whatever, you can build goals. Yeah. And so you get to a point where kids are like, hey Dad, hey Mom, where are we at? We need 10 customers. Where are we at? Like we're at 7. Like Mom, go freaking get another one. Because the kids they're in the game. My kids is so funny. Like we would take them on our incentive trips. Like our company would do incentive trips. We'd take the kids, not on every one of them. Sometimes it's nice to go with just your spouse, but sometimes we'd take the kids. Well, the kids got to a point where they felt like, but we would earn it. Like, guys, we got to do this, we got to do that, and then we're going to do this thing together. And so they were like participating. They were like enlisted in the business. And what happens is they started to feel like it was their business. Like, Dad, how are we doing with this? I'm like, how are we doing? I'm like, how am I doing? But it started feeling that it was their business. Like what we were accomplishing was like the things that we were accomplishing together. And so I think that's really important. And then also there's times, you don't have as much quantity of time sometimes. So you really do have to focus on the quality of time. Like I just put my phone down and like wrestle with my son or something like that, or like, take my girls on a daddy-daughter date or whatever. But like there was times where I would schedule that stuff in, phones away, and you could really just kind of keep those relationships tight. Same obviously with your spouse and in your marriages and so on. And keep good communication. But I tell people, I said, listen, I've had friends of mine that are like, dude, teach me how to do this with like your family and the thing. I was like, listen, it's super simple. It's only 3 steps. Step 1, you got to marry Missy. That's my wife. Step 2 is have amazing kids. And step 3 is just don't blow it. So I probably can't take too much of the credit, but I had some unfair advantages for sure.
Well, it sounds like, your kids have grown up listening to you talk about money in a healthy way and have a good relationship with it. And that speaks a lot that they wanted to get in on the business. Cause I know that a lot of people's kids are like, I just want to spend time with my dad, or don't want to hear him talk about work anymore. So
yeah, my kids, bless their hearts. They probably roll their eyes a little bit when they hear me. Like, I'm like, okay, kids, like I can't. I don't even think I can't's not allowed in our house. Like if our kids are like, I can't do it, I'll be like, what did you just say? Like,
stop.
No, it's a total stop. Like we never say that in our family. Like I can't, doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
And so, I'm always trying to like But what's interesting though is I watch them with their kids, or like my son Isaac. Like my son Isaac knows he can quote my quotes better than I can quote my quotes. I mean, he just rattles them off.
That's awesome.
And so they've really soaked it in. But I'll say this: the essence of leadership is example. So the best way to lead your kids is through your own personal example. It's not what we say. Like we did that stuff for Senate last night. We were talking about. It's one thing to tell your kids to be, hey, go serve others, or it's one thing to tell your kids like be nice to other people or look out for others. Or, hey, you guys should go help participate in whatever. It's another thing to have them at Ross or at Target shopping and wrapping, and then delivering. Like they're experiencing it through your example versus just like what you say, And so I think that's one of the things I tried to do is I tried, to lead by example of these things I was sharing with them that I wanted them to do. I was trying to like do it myself.
Yeah, they're always watching it. It's like that that audio that's going around social media. Is it Ed Milet or Grant Cardone? It's like, oh, you can do whatever you want, honey. Well, why didn't you, Dad? Yeah. You heard that one? Yeah. That's what I was thinking the whole time.
Yeah.
Ed Milet. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And one other thing that I this is something that you teach that I've always loved it, but it's really good to have it kind of reinforced with your stuff. Is your memento mori stuff, right? Contemplate your death, and it sounds sad, but it's actually really a happy thing. And so I'm always trying to take that trip, do that kind of. I don't give my family like a lot of material stuff, but every Christmas I'll try to get them like a little trip, right? But this year I've been trying to think about what to get them for Christmas, and we're going to do a little trip. I did that again this year, but one thing, this will release after Christmas, so it's kind of a surprise, but I'm going to buy them all flowers and write them all what I'm going to say at their funeral. And I think it's partly thanks to you because you brought up that memento mori. So every one of my family members is getting a dozen roses and a letter of what I would say about them at their funeral this year.
Man, that's powerful.
And I think I want you to speak a little bit about why that memento mori is such a big part of your philosophy.
So for anyone that doesn't know what that reference is from, so there's the fifth and last great Roman emperor. His name is Marcus Aurelius. He's known as one of the great Stoics. So he wrote a book called Meditations. And Meditations was basically just it was not meant to be published. It wasn't meant for anyone to know. He just was writing his learnings. Here's the most powerful man in the world. He could have anything he wants. He could have anyone killed that he wants. He could have any woman he wants. He could have any food that he wants. He could have anything he wants. But he was like this really kind of righteous, really deep thinking guy. And he would just write these contemplations he was having. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
You can go read, what he was thinking. And he came up with this phrase called memento mori. It means meditate on mortality. Marcus would say that you could leave life right now, let it determine what you do, say, and think. And you guys know how it is. Like, I don't know how long we all get, like you could leave life right now. What if this is your last podcast? Like, what if we walk out of here and it's the end of it? So you could leave life right now.
On top, that's for sure.
That's right. let it determine what you do, say, and think, And so he would carry a coin in his pocket that says memento mori, just reminding himself of his mortality. One of the things that happens to us, I think, sometimes is that we get casual with life because we just think it's going to be here. It's not always going to be here. The whole thing's a gift. The whole thing. That's why when death happens, it pulls it so close to you where you're like, man, I got to step up in my life and go for it. And so for me, that concept of, you've heard me talk about be the one that lives a life, be the one that writes a story. The future generations of kids, they know your story. They look up into their family lineage. They know your story. Mm-hmm. And if you count your parents, your grandparents, 12 generations back, there was 4,094 people. 4,094 people for the last 12 generations, about 400 years that came together from all over the world. They bled, they cried, they sweat, they won, they lost, they traveled, they gave everything they had so you'd have this moment. And many of them they're already gone. So they gave their whole life so you would live, so you'd have this moment. And so memento mori is to remember you're mortal. Remember this goes fast. The whole thing goes fast. So you got to make something of your life. You got to go be the one that lives a significant life. Be the one that breaks the chains of abuse in your family. Be the one that breaks the addiction in your family. Be the one that builds a net worth that future generations of kids look up and they say, it was him or it was her. They're the ones that taught us the financial principles. They're the ones that changed it for us. They're the ones that build this incredible family legacy and heritage and principles and values that our families build on. And so for me, that's that's this concept that just, kind of wakes you up early, keeps you up late of like, get up and go. Like, what are you doing with your life, And so I try and remember that concept, particularly if I ever feel like I'm getting too casual.
Yeah.
I tell people you want to be urgent, Alexander Hamilton. They wrote the play, and one of the songs is called "Nonstop." So Alexander Hamilton, James Jay, and James Madison were commissioned to write the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were papers that were written to defend the new U.S. Constitution. Without it, by the way, it wouldn't have survived. And so they were going to write 25 Federalist Papers. They ended up writing 80. So James Jay got sick, wrote 4. James Madison wrote 25. Alexander Hamilton wrote 51. And there's a song in there called "Nonstop." And they said, Alexander, why are you always writing like you're running out of time? Day and night like you're running out of time. Do you want to know why he wrote like he was running out of time? Because he was running out of time. He was ultimately killed in a duel by Aaron Burr, the former vice president of the United States. He was 47 when he died. Jeez. He's a young guy, He's a young guy even back in those days, let alone today. Yeah. And so you have to live your life like you're running out of time. You have to go for your dreams like you're running out of time. Go for your goals, like kiss your baby, like, love your wife, like you love your spouse, like you're running out of time. And you don't let time pass. You like stay urgent in your life because you are running out of time. There's only momentum mori, like meditate on mortality. Remember, this thing's going to end. And you could leave life right now. So let it determine what you do, say, and think.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. I mean, sometimes when people have near-death experiences, like you see the change that happens from them. Like, we follow AJ Osborne a lot because he does storage and stuff like that. And it was after a big life-threatening event that so many things in his life changed. So many. And I've been thinking a lot about a conversation that been having with my wife, some friends that have, you talk about the race number 1, and just kind of getting in the hole for that race, and you just assume like, is this credit card debt? Is this, other car debt? Like what are they doing to, to at least feel like they're progressing in that race, when the other side is like, well, if we save and we invest, if we work hard, we do these things, if we delay gratification here, we could have that future later. And I think there's those two different concepts. I mean, you mentioned today, get it this year. And then there's some people that teach like, if you sacrifice now, you'll get it later. So I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, on what we could do, what steps we could take financially today, if we're just trying to grow where we're at, like you mentioned, where we're planted, what could we do to get to where we want to be?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, wealth building is three key steps. And if I had to be on that spectrum of get it all today or get it all later, it'd be definitely later. Dude, you going into consumer debt for all these things today, I don't think it's a great strategy. So three steps for wealth building. One is maximize your income. Basically, you got to learn how to make more. If you know how to make $1, try and figure out a way to make 2. If you know how to make 2, make 5 to 10. Learn how to make more. When I went from a wealth building perspective, when I learned how to make 6 figures in a year, that was a huge deal. Because before that, I think most I'd ever made was $52,000 in a year. When I learned how to make 7 figures in a year, that was a huge deal over 6 figures. When I learned how to make 8 figures in a year, that was a way big deal over 7 figures. In other words, your wealth building acceleration just goes
hockey stick,
total hockey stick curve. The second part, though, is minimize your expenses. Because what most people do is they make $1 and they spend $1. It just kind of follows with them. Mm-hmm. And so, if they make 50, they spend 50. They make 100, they spend 100. And a lot of people spend more than they make, but the point is they're spending as they go. And then the third one is build cash flowing assets. Because what happens is if you're maximizing your income and then minimizing your expenses, you'll create a gap between income and expenses. The gap is what you invest. Now, you take the cash flowing assets, and then it's what's called the Rule of 72. The Rule of 72 basically says you divide the interest rate you're earning on your money, and you divide it into 72. It will tell you how long it's going to take you to double the money. Mm-hmm. And so this is why, going back to would you spend it all now and buy all this stuff, particularly adding more consumer debt, which means you're on the back side of interest versus the front side, meaning the interest is working against you versus for you. The reason I would say to create the gap and then live below, so you're living below your means and you're creating a gap, is because you can double the money. So it's like if someone said to you, I'll play golf with you and every swing's worth 10 cents. Well, 10 cents is not that much, right? They say, how about we do this? We'll double it each hole. So hole two is worth 20 cents. We're like, whatever, let's go. Well, 10 cents, 20 cents, 80 cents, $1.60, $3.20. It's no big deal, right? How much do you think 18th hole's worth? I mean, it's only 10 cents a hole. So is it worth $5? Is it worth $10? It's worth over 13,000, the 10th hole. Why? Because it doubled. It compounded and doubled. The point I'm saying is, if like that TV, the TV's $1,000. You say, dude, just buy it. Like, live their life. Memento mori, dude. You could die today. Like, go buy okay.
Yeah.
Well, if that TV cost you $16,000, would you buy it? No, you wouldn't. But dude, 1,000 doubled is 2, doubled again is 4, doubled again is 8, doubled again is 16. What if you could take that same 1,000 and double it a few times? All of a sudden, you can build net worth, right? Yeah. So for me, you maximize your income, so you got that trend line going up. You minimize your expenses, so that trend line's going down. That creates the gap. Take the gap for step 3, which is build cash flowing assets. Now, once you have cash flowing assets, that's when, if you wanted to do some kind of cooler stuff, I think you can do it because your assets are paying for your expenses versus your like earned income is paying for your expenses. And that, I can tell you from personal experience, that's a really good feeling.
It's a lot better way to go, right?
No question.
I think people are curious, Justin. So what, with your money now, what are you investing it back into assets? Are you investing it back into Modere? Is it time to just...
No, it's primarily...
Obviously, you're giving a lot of it away.
Yeah, it's primarily assets, because that's one of the beautiful things about a Modere business. It's almost for a normal business owner, they would do what you said. And there's no knock on this. This is what traditional business looks like.
Yeah.
You make money, and the best investment you can make is kind of back in your own business, because it's what you know, it's what you're the best at, and so on. So they just kind of replow it back into the business. My business, and most businesses, they're 90% in for 10% cash out, for example, or 95% in for 5% cash out. My business is like less than 1% cash in for 99% cash out. It's just this cash flowing machine,
It's a cash cow.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And there's really very little to no expense on as far as
online.
Besides time.
Yeah, there's not like, you're not putting in like going and buying a bunch of servers for your online thing or whatever. It's just
not to buy moving
heavy
trucks.
equipment.
No heavy equipment, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really powerful cash engine. There's no question about it. So for me, I'm investing kind of I have basically 33 is kind of my investment strategy, the way that we do it. But real estate is 33, business is 33, and then kind of cash management is 33. And we have kind of our own little thesis of kind of how we do it.
Love it. Yeah, that's good to know, man. And one other thing I wanted to kind of talk about why it's so important, because we all share the same faith, and I know that even on the world stage, I was at your event a couple weeks ago, you brought up stuff that's pertinent to faith and spirituality. And I think it's fair to say that for someone that has the platform that you have, that's a business focused platform, I don't know of anyone else that brings up spiritual things as much as you do. Why do you keep that a part of what you're preaching?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying this. I work with people from literally all over the world. So they come from all sorts of different faith backgrounds.
Right.
Some from a Christian background, some from like a Zen or a Buddhist background, and everything in between. Right. Some people have no faith or no faith background.
Right.
So I try and teach in a way that kind of honors people regardless of where they're at and what their journey is and kind of where their perspective is. So that's the first thing. Second thing I'd say is, I believe like as you have a human's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. You know what I'm saying? There's like elements to a human. And so you have to learn to manage all of them. So for example, if you're physically strong, but you're emotionally disastered, we're not going to be able to build the life that you want to build. If you're emotionally super resilient and strong, and spiritually super strong, but your health is just a complete disaster, we're not like the complete person. So I feel like there's these different components. So that'd be just from a logical perspective of how I look at life.
Yeah.
And then, for me, I feel like it's like just kind of being authentic to kind of who you are. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not trying to preach to anyone what they need to believe, but I also am
You're
cool
not going to back down from what you
what I believe,
Yeah,
and
take it or leave it, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of my perspective. I'm not telling you what you need to go do. It's just this is a kind of my way of looking at it. And if I tried to decouple faith or decouple like God's role in my life, I would never have become, not even like a semblance of who I've become. So many of the decisions that I've made were like tied back to like deeper reasons and deeper reasoning for me. And so So to decouple it, it wouldn't be an authentic conversation. And again,
Right.
that doesn't mean anyone else they can go right, kind of run their own race. But for me it'd be like saying, decoupling business out of my story. That would be really inauthentic, or decoupling family out of my story. Like all of those things were like so integral in what I did in my faith, and I feel like God's blessing. I feel like a ton of calling in my life. And I don't say that with any arrogance. There's times when I feel like pressure, like from it, But like I feel like a calling. Like if I were to play small or do nothing, if I were to sit on my couch and just sit there all day, it's not that I couldn't do it financially. I could do it financially. It's not that I couldn't do it from a family perspective. I could do it, but I would feel like a calling was like I wasn't fulfilling a calling of why I was put on the earth.
An accountability.
That's right.
Right. I mean, I feel the same thing. We were just talking with our producer before the show. It's like, talking about specifically spiritual, right? And I just like, I don't feel like I have the right to not live up to my spiritual potential, because I've seen so many miracles. My parents took such great care of me, right? I don't feel like I have the right to not live up to my spiritual potential, but it goes to business, family, everything,
For
right?
sure.
If you have the conviction and you know what the right way to go is and you don't do it, right? You maybe don't have as much of an excuse at the end of the day. It's like the parable of the talents, right?
Yeah.
Someone gives you the talents, you got to go multiply them. You can't just bury that.
Yeah. So that story, there's two great lessons in that story. So if you don't know the story, there's basically three workers or three servants, and they're given 3 talents, right? Or they're given talents. The first one's given 1, then 2, then 5. The one with 5. So lesson number 1 is everyone got something. Mm-hmm. So no one got 0.
Yeah.
Like I may have only gotten 1, you guys may have gotten 5, but we all got something, right? The one with 5 does something with them, basically like magnifies them, or like does something to where they take the 5 and make 5 more. So they like multiply.
The rule of doubling.
Yeah, started doubling it, right?
Rules in me too.
The one with 2 was now 4. The one with 1 buried it. Why did he bury it? You say, well, it's because he's a loser. No. He buried it because he was scared he was going to lose it, or if he didn't hold on to it, he'd lose it. There's a law called the law of use. What you don't use, you lose. So he lost the talent, right? So basically the master's like, well done. And he says, you're an unwise and slothful servant, which I don't know, that's probably not very awesome to be. And so when he says that, he realizes the reason that this is my second learning, and this is according to me, so this means it's probably wrong. But the second reason I think that story is significant is your gifts and talents weren't given to you for you. Your gifts and talents are given to you for the rest of us. And so I tell people, whatever your faith is, study, practice, and teach it. So if Hinduism or Buddhism or being a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, if those are important to you, then study, practice, and teach it. Like if that's a part of your journey, then I would like to hear about it, because to me it's integral in these components that make up a human.
Absolutely. And one more thing you pointed out about the parable is they were operating out of fear, right? Operating out of fear. I'll just share another personal experience, right? Like me and my wife, we have this opportunity to go to Jerusalem, but we have a baby. And so, we probably could leave the baby. And I watched Callan leave a baby when we went to Costa Rica. And it was so hard on the parents, right? Especially your first one. But it's like, what could happen? What could happen? I'm like, well, we got to operate out of faith, right? We can't operate out of fear. Of course, our baby could have a tragic accident while we're gone, but it's not the way we got to live. And so same thing with this parable of the talents is like, got to operate out of faith, right?
Yeah, I using your example, I agree 100%, and generally I agree 100%. Let me say this though. So I used to fight. I used to box, like junior Olympics and stuff. And by the way,
how old are you when you were boxing?
So I trained through those high school years, but like I competed when I was 17 and 18.
Okay.
But like I sparred and fought all grown up, and so. I remember, so my trainer was a guy named Gene Fulmer. Gene Fulmer is a super middleweight champion of the world. He's in the Boxing Hall of Fame, beat Sugar Ray Robinson for the championship back in the 50s. So Gene, dude, even when Gene trained us, you wouldn't want to mess with Gene. I mean, this dude was an old man, and I would want no piece of this guy.
Yeah.
He was a bad man. And I remember we were before I fought, and he says to me, he goes, are you nervous? And Gene is as tough as nails. I swear he could just chew nails if he wanted to. And so I didn't want to be a wuss, but I also didn't want to lie because it's Gene. You get it out of respect. So I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, good. He said, if you'd have told me you weren't nervous, he said, you're either lying or you're crazy.
Yeah.
And the nerves, that fear, because what if this is the time that you get knocked out? What if this time you get embarrassed in front of everybody? What if this is time that, they just freaking knock you unconscious or break your tooth or you know what I'm saying? Like, what if this is the time you get whooped up on? And so what that fear, those nerves are also what make you sharp. And so like Mike Tyson is one of the baddest men of all time. Mike Tyson said he would cry before every fight. Mike Tyson would bawl before every fight because you'd feel these nerves, but then you'd have to learn how to deal with the fear. So the fear.
He also said it was because he was worried about what he was going to do to the other guy.
Yeah, it's all of it. It's all of it. It's all of it. I'm telling you, it is.
Yeah.
Because fighting's interesting. Boxing's interesting because, like, I played football and basketball and track and so on. So in basketball, if you're stressed out, you just pass to somebody else. Football, just you can blend in with everybody else. Fighting is just you and them, and they are trying to smash your face in with their fist. So it's just this like very intense experience. And so I share that with you to say the fear, we can use those emotions of fear to keep us sharp, keep us humble, keep us like very heightened aware of like what we're trying to accomplish. But then to your point, we do have to kind of lean into like, our faith to overcome this stuff and to step into it, have some courage. So the fear doesn't cripple you, but the fear can be heightened and it can keep you like, keep you humble and hungry.
There's no courage without fear.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, no, you can't be brave unless you're scared.
That's exactly right.
So that's a huge point. I want to ask maybe one more question, then we can get to on your way because I'm just rolling. But one thing that you do is you help people set goals, right? I went to your event, and one of the amazing things you did was just help people really write out their goals, their 1, 3, 5, and 10-year goals. Pick at them, and set them in a realistic way. What does the next 10 years look like for Justin Prince?
Yeah. So Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins' original mentor. And Jim Rohn had silver hair. He's been speaking for 40, 50 years, gets off stage. And this guy walks up to him and says, Mr. Rohn, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And Jim Rohn says, I want to talk about things that matter with people who care. And so that's what I want to do for these next 10 years. So it's like when you're in the circle of like the thought leadership, like the leadership world.
Yeah.
I want to be one of the voices talking about things that matter with people who care. People are like, oh yeah, like I've heard of Ed Milet, or I've heard of Jim Rohn, or I've heard of Tony. Like I want to have my voice. People are like, oh yeah, I listen to his stuff. He does a good job.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. So go build out my personal brand and just continue to serve people at a high level.
When's the next event?
I'm doing it February 4th in Newport Beach.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be sick. We're doing the event, and then that night we chartered a private like a private yacht to do a VIP thing. It's going to be really cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
That's amazing, man.
Awesome.
Well, I've learned so much. And what are your main takeaways, Callan?
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with things you talked about, having the courage to take those next step and building that confidence foundation. I mean, I think tons of people are just, they're struggling with that so much to be able to get to that next step, or to be able to have the vision or set the goals, or just be able to feel motivated, especially in just today's world with, social media and with, everything that we're dealing with, and, all the stuff in the news and things like that. So I don't know. I just feel really motivated and like you said, refreshed, being able to talk about the things you've mentioned today. So
Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, not only am I applying the things in my own life, like my big Christmas present this year is going to be centered around that memento mori, like one of your big teachings, but also, just the refreshing change of mindset from, don't act your way, just go above and beyond, right? And get in those habits. I think it's a big deal. And I just want to say this to you. I know you don't need to hear this, but your event is named Be the One.
Yeah.
Right. And I want you to know that you are the one. You've been helping people in such a big way. You don't need to hear that from me, but our audience is going to be so blessed from hearing what you've had to say today. And it means a lot to us. Any other last things you want to say before we wrap up?
No, first of all, I appreciate that. Honored to be on with you guys, and appreciate that you're creating a platform to serve people at a high level. Just kind of to close, I'd say this: be the one is not become the one. So it's not like you need to grow into something. You are the one. Like the 4,094 people lived and bled and died for you. Be the one is like a present state. It's like you leave this podcast, you're like, huh, I'm going to like be it today. Like I'm going to step into it today. I'm going to act it today. I'm going to be that one today. I'm going to have my shoulders back, my chin up. I'm going to have some confidence. I'm going to have some courage. I'm going to go for my dreams, go for my goals. I'm going to do it like the one would do it today because you are the one, you know? And so it's not that like you need to become it in 10 years. Like you're it now. You got to start being that person now.
Love it, man. Well, thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on,
honor to be
Justin.
with you guys.
This was amazing. This was another favorite episode of Beyond Net Worth.